It was a silent night, muffled by the early morning heat. The hotel was in a small town, surrounded by mountains and deserted roads. The silence was broken only by the soft creak of the old wooden floor and the gentle wind blowing against the window. I had already asked my husband to bring me the room key, because all I wanted was to sleep without being disturbed. The tiredness weighed on my eyes, and I finally fell asleep, feeling the peace of being in a seemingly safe and quiet place. In the middle of the night, however, I was awakened by a strange sensation. Something was wrong. My body felt heavy, unable to move. My mind struggled to process what was happening, and my heart began to race. I looked around, trying to make sense of it, but my terror grew when I noticed a figure in the corner of the room. It was a woman. She was standing by the window, calmly watching. Her presence seemed too real to be a dream. Confused and frightened, I managed to ask her what she was doing in my room. She looked at me, her expression serene, but there was something deeply melancholy in her eyes. "My name is Katerina," she said in a calm and soft voice, but it seemed full of stories that I didn't yet know. "I'm from Argentina, and this was my room." I, overcome with confusion, told her that this was not true. This was my room. And what was she doing here? Katerina looked at me, still calm, and explained with disturbing naturalness. "This was the last place I was before I died. My husband and I were returning home from Santa Catarina to Argentina. On the road, the car skidded. We crashed head-on with a truck. We didn't survive. The air in the room seemed thicker, and my mind tried desperately to deny what I was hearing. I needed to get out, to escape this presence. I tried to get out of bed, but my body remained trapped, as if under a spell. I wanted to scream, to call for help, but my voice wouldn't come out. It was as if the very atmosphere of the room was against me, keeping me immobile. The only thing I could do was pray. I repeated the prayers silently, searching for a way out, trying to push away that paralyzing terror. Katerina, however, remained there, standing still without moving, as if she were waiting for something. My prayers seemed to have no end, and then, without realizing it, I fell asleep again, enveloped in exhaustion mixed with fear. The next morning, after finally waking up without that presence, I went to the reception to ask about what had happened. The receptionist, a middle-aged man with a serious expression, looked at me strangely when I mentioned the name Katerina. He had no record of a guest with that name, but when I mentioned the Argentine couple, his eyes widened a little. He remembered a couple who had stayed there a few years ago. They were Argentinian, and shortly after leaving the hotel, they were in a fatal accident on the road. The husband's name was on the registration, but the wife's was not. What was most disturbing, according to the receptionist, was that since the accident, employees had reported hearing heavy footsteps coming down the wooden stairs in the early hours of the morning, as if someone were walking through the hotel, but no one was ever there. It was as if someone was trapped in the space trying to find their way back. I left the hotel that day with a heavy heart, not knowing if what I had experienced was a terrible dream, an illusion of the mind, or something much deeper and inexplicable. To this day, Katerina remains in my memory, a mysterious and tragic figure who may still be wandering the corridors of that hotel, trapped between the world of the living and the unknown. So I got home from my boyfriend's house around 1:30 a.m. on Friday. I parked my car down the road from my house since we don't have space. As I get to my walkway to the front door of my house, I hear a short one, 2 whistle. Not like wolf whistling, but a very quick one, like when you're trying getting someone's attention. I stop and look around and I can't see anyone or hear anyone moving. I'm pretty familiar with my neighbors. We're in a small dead-end street, and in the 10 years we've lived here, they've never done this sort of thing, so I think I can rule them out. Anyway, as I go up to the top step of the landing, I hear the whistle again. I stop, look around, and again I see and hear nothing. I felt my heart start to race, and I turn my back to put my key in the door. And as I'm putting my key in the lock, I hear the whistle again, but it sounded closer, or like it came from a slightly different direction, still from behind me, but closer to where I was. I have never opened my door so fast. I peeked through the windows to the side and still couldn't see who it could have been. Next day, I tell my family and boyfriend over dinner about the whistling, and they all said, "Oh, it's that bird, that noisy bird." And yes, There is a noisy bird in our area that makes noise at day and night. However, it's not a whistle as such, it does more of a high-pitched tune that goes for like 2-3 seconds. It's a distinct noise and it sounds nothing like a normal whistle. And of course I can distinguish the two because I've heard this bird all day every day for a few months now.
Fast forward to this morning, my mum messages me and says my sister heard whistling last night. Before she could send her next message, I said if you're going to say it's a bird, it's not. She said my sister told her it definitely came from a person and it was like a song. But not that bird we were talking about. It was a person. My sister said she heard it at 4 a.m. and thought someone was in the house, it was that clear, and wanted to scream, but was too scared. I don't know, maybe it's a new bird that's flown to our neighborhood, but in the years we've been here, no one in the family has mentioned any creepy things like whistling in the night, and for it to happen a couple times within the space of 1 week, I don't know, man. Weird. If anyone has heard of similar stuff happening in the middle of the night like this, let me know. I heard the whistling last night, but not the initial whistle from a week ago. I heard the sing-song whistle that my sister heard. It was loud and clear enough to wake me from my sleep around 3:30 a.m. I sat up and stopped to listen, and it was a tune. I tried to hear if it was a song and then maybe I could recognize it. It was not anything I recognized. It was so creepy hearing it so clearly. I can't believe I woke up from it. It didn't sound like it was coming from inside, but very close to my house outside on my side of the house. I told my mum and now she's all freaked out because 2 of us have heard it. What if someone is lurking around the house?
When I was around 11, I lived in an apartment complex in a sort of sketchy neighborhood. Next to the complex was a memorial park that I often took walks in. That day was just like any other. I was doing my walk around with my brother, who was 13 at the time. While we were walking, I felt a sense of paranoia the entire time, like someone was watching me. I reasoned it to just be my anxiety, which was pretty severe in my tween years. While we were walking down a hill, my brother found his friend and basically ditched me. I didn't mind it though, I kept walking along the trail. As I made it to a sort of secluded spot, I noticed a dog all alone. I looked at the tag very quickly. I heard something behind me. I stood up and saw a really creepy guy, sort of in the distance but still a weirdly close spot to be in a secluded area. He walked up to me and said it was his dog, and so I promptly nodded my head and left. Continuing my walk, I swear I could see him in the corners of my eye. I was getting freaked out, so I went to go find my brother. Eventually finding him, I explained the situation. He assumed it was just my anxiety, but agreed to go home anyways. He didn't want me to be stressed. Making our way home, I saw the man who was stalking me get into his car. It was a beat-up white Hyundai. I told him how I was getting worried because I didn't want to lead this stalker back to our complex. So we grabbed our bikes and started riding down to the gas station nearby. Not long after being in the gas station, that same exact car was in the parking lot. The man sitting in it, glaring at us. My brother took note of that. Now he was actually believing me, and it wasn't just my nerves. We rode home as quick as possible, making sure he wasn't in sight before rushing into our apartment. That night, someone knocked on our door. Mum looked through the peephole, but she didn't open the door. She asked what the person needed, in which he said his car broke down. Me and my brother peeked through the window to see who it was. It was the stalker. We must not have been sneaky enough getting in. We told Mum not to open the door, in which she told him to piss off. Since then, and up until we moved out, I've seen him around a lot, creeping, staring, driving around. I stopped going on walks in the memorial park since then. Honestly, I think if I didn't look back when I saw the dog, I might have been scooped up right then and there. This story isn't exactly mine, but instead my mum's mainly. It happened to her 9 years ago when we were moving to a different house. The house we lived in at the time had some paranormal activity, but nothing too extreme. Doors would open and close on their own. You would hear light footsteps walking up the stairs, light tapping at the window, and footsteps on the roof too. I never really hear much, but my parents did. Keep in mind the stairs are old and very creaky, so you'll definitely hear someone going up or down the stairs. This will be an important detail later on in the story. However, on the last day there, that's when some serious and scary shit had gone down. My mum had finished packing the rest of the stuff from the house and was bringing the last of it to her car. My mum went back inside the house to make sure she had got everything and didn't leave anything extra behind. My dad was inside and told my mum that he was going to grab the last few things from the garage and would be back inside in a few minutes. My dad leaves the house and my mum goes upstairs to make sure she got everything from the bedroom. As she's making her way to the kitchen, she hears someone coming up the stairs. The footsteps stop at the top of the stairs and a voice says out loud, "I don't think that's a good idea." My mum hears it and said it was my dad's voice who said it. My mum replied to my dad and asked him, "What's not a good idea?" There was no response and everything was dead quiet. My mum kept asking the same question and was annoyed that my dad wasn't answering her. She went to the stairs and saw nobody was there. My mum was confused and got a bit freaked out since she heard nobody go down the stairs and only go up the stairs. A moment later, she heard the front door open and close and saw my dad come up the stairs. My mum asked my dad the same question, "What isn't a good idea?" and my dad gave her a confused look. He asked her, "What are you talking about?" and she explained to him what she had just heard not too long ago. My dad told my mum that he was in the garage gathering the lady of his stuff and loading it up in his truck before he came back inside to check on her. A few seconds later, there was a loud crash from my parents' room, and when they went to go check what it was the ceiling fan that was on the floor, shattered into pieces. My mum then told my dad that we need to leave now and not come back. My mum gave my dad a terrified look as they quickly ran out the door, locked the place up, and sped out of there without looking back. I lived in the Appalachian Mountains my whole life, where the woods are thick, tangled, and full of mystery. Growing up there felt like stepping back in time. We had no cell phones or gadgets to distract us, just the endless expanse of forest as our playground and our imaginations as our guide. My best friend Madison and I would spend hours exploring the dense woods behind my house, following animal tracks, climbing trees, and discovering hidden creeks. In autumn, when the leaves turned fiery shades and fell, revealing clearer paths, we'd push a little deeper each day. We'd mark our bases in the most secret nooks we stumbled upon, pretending we were the first explorers to find them. But no matter how brave we felt, we always stayed close enough to see my house in the distance, until one day, when the forest felt just a little more inviting, a little less ordinary, and curiosity got the better of us. We brought twine and other supplies that day, winding it around tree trunks so we'd find our way back. We kept walking, deeper than we'd ever gone before, until we reached a strange old tree that split in two, like a giant slingshot rising from the ground. Right next to it, half hidden in the hillside beneath a pile of leaves and branches, was a rusty handle. As we brushed away the leaves, we realized it was attached to a heavy wooden door, embedded in the earth as if it had always been there, waiting. Heart pounding, Madison and I both tugged on the handle, and the door finally broke open, revealing steps leading down into pitch blackness. Madison looked at me, unsure, but we felt compelled to go down. Maybe it was the mystery or the thrill of finding something forgotten, but we didn't hesitate. The air was thick and damp as we descended. When we reached the bottom, we found ourselves in a cramped room. In the middle of the floor lay a single, worn photograph. I held it up to our flashlight and froze. It showed two children, both girls, standing in front of a house that looked eerily like mine. The girls' eyes were so dark and their grins twisted, a little too wide. Madison and I looked at each other, panicked, and then bolted back up the steps, leaving the photo behind us. When we reached the top, we looked around. Our path of twine was gone, as if someone, or something, had unraveled it. We blindly ran back through the forest, Finally reaching my house, we burst through the door, breathless and wide-eyed. My parents immediately noticed something was wrong. We tried to explain what we'd found: the strange door in the hillside, the steps, and the photograph. My mum's face tightened with concern, but my dad, always the skeptic, shook his head and laughed. But when he saw we were serious, they agreed to come with us, though I could tell they thought it was just a kid's overactive imagination. With my parents in tow, we spent what felt like hours retracing our steps through the woods, following what we remembered of the path. We finally spotted the twisted, slingshot-shaped tree standing exactly where we'd found it before. My heart leapt, but when we scoured the area around it, there was no sign of the door, no rusty handle, no disturbed leaves, just bare earth and untouched forest floor. It was like the whole thing had never existed. My dad muttered something about kids and their stories, but as we walked back home, I caught a worried look in my mom's eyes. Madison and I exchanged a glance too, and in that moment, we knew we'd experienced something no one else would ever believe.